It's only going to get worse for almost all Americans across the nation, as the United States is now considered to be at a very weak state. Now, when you think about how countries like China, Russia, and Iran continue to send warnings to us, like, with little to no repercussions, then you can see just how laid back the Biden administration looks to be. Now, here's something they don't want you to know. A recent meeting between high officials of US and Mexico may completely change the landscape of how many of us live today, especially with top US officials asking them for help when it comes to the borders. Help that may cost the American people. Now, I know that this is not the sort of information that you guys would want, but believe me when I tell you guys, it's information that you need to know about.
President Obrador said he is open to these talks, but wants the U.S. to lift sanctions against Cuba and Venezuela in return. Critics say today's summit is simply about paying Mexico to do something we won't.
Mexico right now is operating from a position of strength. Mexico has no incentive to end this. All of this money that is working its way up through Mexico, the cartels are bringing in, it's going right back into their government.
And now we're seeing Anthony Blinken, Alejandro Mayorkas, they're going to Mexico. It's window dressing. It's a limp attempt to show that they care about a problem that they ignored for the past 3 years. To your point, we have Joe Biden, who's back on vacation. Again, it's fine. Presidents take vacations during Christmas week. But the problem is that every weekend is a vacation for Joe Biden. He has spent more than 40% of his presidency while on vacation. He should have stopped off at the border first on his way to St. Croix, because this is now a national security issue. We've had hundreds of people that have been apprehended crossing the U.S. southern border that are on the FBI terror watch list. Those are the ones that are getting caught. What about the really skilled terrorists that can get under the radar and into the country? And if there's a terror attack in this country as a result of somebody coming across the U.S. southern border, it's an impeachable offense.
It's no secret that our borders have let in terrorists. There's no way to refute that. But if attacks do happen domestically, do you guys believe that President Biden should be impeached over it? Just comment 1 if you think that this is enough cause for him to be removed from office. And 2, if you believe that, this is really not that big of a deal. Now, while you guys are thinking about that, please take a second, hit the like button for the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you can stay informed about anything and everything that's going on around us that can definitely affect our lives. Appreciate that, guys. So Mexico seems to be holding all the cards here, and it's not putting the United States in a very good position, given that, well, you heard that the president wants the U.S. to lift sanctions on both Cuba and Venezuela. Either that or they're not going to do a darn thing about the borders. Does that sound like a fair trade to you guys? It's also very probable that Mexico will also ask for more aid, and while it's not impossible for the U.S. to produce more money from thin air, especially if the money's going abroad, wink wink, right? But yeah, while that's not impossible, we should also realize that there's going to be a limit somewhere, right? The budget is not set to infinite, meaning that if more money continues to be poured out on one end, another will probably have to, either suffer cuts or see funding reduced completely. I mean, just think about SNAP and EBT benefits and Social Security, for example. Those funds are finite, and heck, Social Security may be cut back within the next decade if something isn't done to help with the solvency issue. And this is why some experts are worried about many Americans, since there's just not much that they can do if their benefits are cut. It's not like we can just tell Congress to approve more aid for Americans. They're not going to do that. But if we want Mexico's help with the borders, then America is just going to have to pay for it. And just to give you guys a better look at this problem, look at what's happened in New York City. In just 2 years, it's estimated that 150,000 migrants have entered the Big Apple. Within just the past few years, their local government, led by Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams, they've spent around $2.4 billion on housing and emergency response coordination.
New York City has long been a city of immigrants, living up to the words on the Statue of Liberty in the city's harbor. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Alone among major U.S. cities, New York has a legal obligation to offer shelter to everyone who wants it. But the current influx of migrants and asylum seekers is putting that to the test.
They came from around the world, making often dangerous journeys to a city they hoped would offer them better lives. What they've found is a city whose migrant crisis is at a breaking point. An intake center at the historic Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan has been filled to overflowing. Many have been sleeping shoulder to shoulder on concrete sidewalks. Mayor Eric Adams has called for federal assistance.
We need help. We need help, and it's not going to get any better. We put buses there for cooling systems, but it's just not sustainable.
City officials say the shelter system has been overwhelmed by the nearly 100,000 migrants and asylum seekers who have arrived in New York since spring 2022.
Now, don't get me wrong though, guys. I understand that some people are seeking asylum, some people need help. What I'm highlighting here is that the costs are catching up to us. And if something's not done, it's going to cost Americans a lot more in the future. And it's not just benefits, all right? I know I talked about SNAP and Social Security, but here's something many of you guys might not know. There's an expensive ski resort near Aspen that recently saw this huge influx of people coming in and looking for jobs because they were told that there were a lot of these jobs available in the area. These people are now being forced to sleep in their cars as the community doesn't have the necessary resources to be able to house them. Now, this place is a really expensive spot. So expensive that the cheapest property that's currently on the market there is worth $720,000. I mean, you got to feel bad for these folks that just wanted a job, right?
Now, migrants, many from Venezuela, are coming to Colorado. They're looking for work.
This has been an issue we have followed closely in Denver and surrounding communities. Tonight, your reporter for The Mountain, Spencer Wilson, caught up with some migrants who heard there may be jobs in Carbondale near Aspen, so they traveled to the high country.
Right now, this is home, living out of their cars in this parking lot just outside Carbondale. And while 84 people are still desperately searching for work and the conditions out here are rough as the weather gets colder, they say it's better than where they just came from.
Immigrants Asdrubal and Wilson got lucky today. They were able to help a Carbondale local move for some cash, way more than they made back in Venezuela.
A standard salary in the country of Venezuela would be $10 a month. If I buy a sack of flour, you didn't buy cheese. If you buy cheese, you don't buy the meat.
Their families were starving, so they came here. But with a huge group, Carbondale cannot help all of them with housing at once. So cars are their best option, 2 or 3 to a car.
And the cold in the night turns these cars into a freezer. So a lot of them aren't sleeping fully throughout the night because they're waking up so often to turn the car on, heat it up, turn it off. So they an hour, 2 hours so it can be warm, and then the heat is gone in 30 minutes.
Now, I'm not sure if the rumor was made up for them to, make the drive to Colorado, but one thing is certain. We should probably expect more of these things to happen across different states. Which now brings me to a huge concern coming from Americans across the country. The concern that the Biden administration continues to look after everyone else, making sure that they're housed with food, with clothing and all that. But they fail to remember that there are countless Americans who also need the same amount of help. I mean, just think about homeless veterans, right? How many of these people need help? How many Americans on Social Security, on SNAP benefits, SSI and SSDI? Now again, don't get the message twisted. There's no harm in helping people who need help. You and I have probably done it countless times in our lives, but you and I never forgot to help those close to us first. Now, I'm not sure what's going to come from these talks in Mexico, if the American taxpayer is going to have to pay out more, or if some of our benefits will actually get cut slowly. All I know is that there's a lot of disappointment in the air. Disappointment that will for sure continue all throughout 2024 unless something changes. But what are your thoughts on this, guys? Make sure you let me know down below in the comments. And before I go, I want to thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for liking the video, and I'll see you on the next one.